Okay, distinguished guests, keynote speakers, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the main session of ICOELT. And now we will proceed to the second plenary session with two keynote speakers, Associate Professor Lee Koi Cheng from National University of Singapore and Professor Dr. Jufrizal M. Hum from Universitas Negeri Padang. But first, I would like to invite the moderator of the second plenary session, Senorita Yulia Sari, SPD, M. TESOL.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yati, for the time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the last plenary session of online international conference on English language and teaching, or ICOELT 8, under the theme English language and teaching and research in this digital era, challenges and possibilities. My name is Senorita Yuliasari, and I will be your moderator to handle this discussion this afternoon. And I am assisted by Mr. Mauludul Haq to operate the screen and technical staff. Thank you, Mr. Hanif. After we got insightful presentations from Dr. Melissa and also Dr. Rajiman early this morning, now I would like to invite you all to hear other knowledge sharing from other two speakers. The third speaker today is Associate Professor Lee Koi Cheng, or can I just call Dr. Casey? Are you here, Dr. Casey?
Yes.
Yes, how are you, Dr. Casey?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Dr. Casey is from National University of Singapore. It is such honor for us to have you here. Dr. Casey completed her PhD from University of Stirling, Scotland, and now she is the Deputy Director for Publications and Outreach at National University of Singapore. Her research interests include the technology-enhanced language learning, or TELL, which is really happening nowadays, I believe that, and also academic writing and writing assessment as well. Currently, Dr. Casey is active in doing her education projects involving collaboration with English language teachers from her neighbors countries, including Indonesia, of course. And this afternoon, she will be talking about English language teaching in this digital era. What are nowadays realities, and what are some challenges that we are coping, and where this English language teaching is going forward, and what are the possibilities. And before we start, as a kindly reminder for my fellow participants, please drop your questions in the chat box so we can reach them right after the presentations from the panelists, all right? And without further ado, may I present to you Dr. Casey.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that all of us are not Zoom fatigued yet. So I titled the presentation or my sharing today as ELT in the digital era, challenges, realities, and possibilities. So I'm going to talk through all three of them, but I'm going to start later on with a short overview on advances in technology, and then relate that to ELT and specifically in second language or foreign language acquisition. And then I'll go through the three key things that I've mentioned here: challenges, realities, and possibilities. So before I start, I thought to say thank you to the conference for inviting me here to share my experience with you, and also to congratulate the university for its 66th anniversary. So challenges, realities, and later on perhaps you would also be able to share some of these that you have encountered. So a request from me is basically throughout the presentation, if you could share your thoughts and questions using the Zoom chat. And if you share a certain, or you agree with a certain comment that the fellow participant says, maybe use a thumbs up feature to say that you agree with that particular comment. And then we'll see that maybe that particular comment has got many upvotes and that will probably be something that we want to zoom in on. So I'm going to start with an overview of technological advances and our English language teaching. So I'm not too sure whether you are in the era of the big frame, as you can see on the left-hand side, a big server. And then the evolution then moved on to our desktop, and now we carry around our mobile phones. So with each phase or each period, I thought that I kind of relate that to the use of technology in our teaching in this way. So when we had that clunky big server, what we had was a standalone. That means there's no connectivity among all of us. So if you need to use, or if you want to learn, not by audio tapes, and you want to use CDs, you go to a certain desktop and you put it in and you learn it there. And the next time things are stored there, you go back there and you go back to that particular desktop. So there's not much of connectivity. So connectivity is very little or low, or accessibility is also low. The next phase then comes is the internet, the early stages of internet. It's a higher interactivity, a medium accessibility, and now we carry with us 3G, 4G, and soon it's going to be 5G. And when it's associated with language teaching, you see that in the earlier days, because there's very little connection, there's very little engagement, what we had was asynchronous drills, structured practices. We then move on to also asynchronous, but then we had emails, we had discussion forums, so there was a little bit more interaction among students, as well as among students and the teacher. Now we have WhatsApp, Telegram, Line, WeChat, the Zoom, Teams, and Google Meet, and so on and so forth. And it has allowed us to have synchronous communication among many, many of us. So if I contextualize it later, but before that, I thought I would give us a very quick snapshot. I don't know whether people are aware of all these social media or social networking sites that started in 1997. And now we are now at Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. These are the latest in terms of social networking sites. I think many of us may not be even aware of the very first one called 6degrees.com or Friendster. I remember I encountered, I used that a little bit, Friendster, but I can't remember what it is, how it is at the moment. But that's the evolution of social networking sites. Again, quickly relating it back to technology and assumptions in second language or foreign language acquisition, you would see that in the first stage, it was much more like a behaviorist kind of theory. In the second stage, then it becomes a little bit more, talking about lowering of anxiety, is more humanistic kind. And the third phase at the moment, or we are moving away from the third phase, you hear research, we hear people talking about social constructivists, co-construction of meaning, as well as engagement with our language learners. So they are kind of tied in with these three prominent periods of technological advances. So from the very beginning of 1990s or even 1980s, right up until current day. So very briefly, in each period, the theories of SLA and FLA. So in the behaviorist theory, those of you who are familiar, I'm sure we're familiar with this, is theories that Skinner, Watson, Pavlov were talking about. It's about learning and unlearning, conditioning of imitation, practice, reinforcement, and habit formation. I'm just going to go through this very quickly because I thought I would like to set a context for ELT as well as the technological advances. And then comes this particular phase where we are talking about reducing stress, building of confidence in our language learners. And we move on to the social constructivist theory, and that talks about all this that are in, I think, many people are familiar with this. And it's about learners developing connection and linguistic competence by interacting and communicating with people within their knowledge community. So it's basically making sense of meaning, using language, making sense of meaning within a community of learners, within a community that we are sub-community as well as a larger community that we are in. And I think we are probably moving a little bit beyond this to, at the moment, probably need to integrate all this together. At this stage that we are in, it's not just linguistic competency that we're looking at as teachers, language teachers, ELT teachers. There's the interrelated, interconnectedness between linguistic competency being contextually appropriate, and then also earlier in the morning in the opening speech, the Vice Rector talked about CLIL, that's disciplinary knowledge. And then at the bottom there, you'd see that in this current world that people talk about to be preparing our students for workplace readiness, you need data literacy as well as digital literacy. So the ELT, the field of ELT now seems to have expanded beyond the earlier days. And we are into this stage where we walk into the classroom, we need to be, as ELT teachers, in either second language or foreign language, we need to know all this. These are all the background information that we need to be aware of. And so my first question is there a tension here between so fast the technology moves, or technological changes move so fast, but our language learning takes time, and language learning may not always be a straightforward thing, right? Sometimes it's a setback here and there, and there are interferences such as unhealthy communication habits or practices that sometimes our students pick up, and sometimes they'll need to relearn some of the new things and practices. So that's the context that we're in. So my first question that I've had here in this presentation is challenges. In the morning and also in the early part of the afternoon, I went through a number of presentations, the parallel sessions, and many of the colleagues have got really interesting studies that they're doing, and they are based on some of the challenges that we face today. So, you know, the COVID situation, the pandemic situation has actually escalated this use of technology. We now have a common language to talk about because we all have experienced teaching online, our students learning online, because all of us had to do it. All of us at some point now maybe still have to do it. So we now seem to have a common experience that we're talking about this. Previously, it could be some people who've got fully online classes, some don't, some have got flipped, some are doing blended. But I think we're at this stage where we have this common experience of every one of us going through online teaching, you know, fully online teaching. So I'm going to pause here for 45 seconds, and I have a request. If you could type in using the Zoom chat, what is one main challenge that you have faced in ELT amidst technological advances? It could be now in talking about COVID, the pandemic. It could be also amidst these technological advances. So I'm going to pause here for 45 seconds for you to put in your thoughts. If I could ask you to type in that Zoom chat. Yeah, so basically, what is one challenge? What is the biggest challenge that you've had if you had to teach fully online, or if you have to use a certain technology? what is that main challenge that we're facing? Okay, I see a number of responses already, so maybe another 10 seconds for you to finish your thought, or for people to also leave comments there. We'll come back to that after, at the end of the presentation. So, okay, thank you to those who have done that. Those that we have surveyed, those that we have talked to in the past few months, maybe some of you have got this in your responses. So the first thing that people talk about, or the lecturers here talk about, is engagement and rapport with students. And this is in relation with fully online or hybrid kind of lessons. The engagement is not the same, the reports doesn't seem to be the same with as compared with face-to-face. That's the first challenge that people do comment about. The second one is about accessibility and inequality. It's about bandwidth. It's about sometimes people get dropped off when they come online. It's issues about hardware, software. It's about the space that we can have our learning as well as teaching. So your students or our students may be in their homes and maybe not in an environment that's conducive for them to go online to study. And then there is also the digital inequality that your Education and Culture Minister talked about early this year, especially during the pandemic. There's also about inclusivity. It's a sense of belonging. People want, when people meet face to face, people come together, there seems to be a rapport building and a sense of belonging in a certain group. But when this is taken away, the face-to-face connection is taken away, people are questioning about that sense of belonging, and that's inclusivity in all that. And of course, throughout the morning and afternoon presentations, I've heard also about how ready we are as instructors, how ready are our students, how ready are administrators to deal with this situation, how have we changed our curricula, our materials, our assessment, our infrastructure, and so on and so forth. There is also the question about academic integrity. It's about cheating. It's about online exams and the risk of cheating, which I will elaborate a little bit more in the later stage of my presentation. And the last one that later I'll also talk a little bit about is now what has come onto the spotlight is the mental well-being, emotional well-being of our students as well as our staff members. And these are issues that we feel that need to be taken care of as well. So those are the challenges that we are looking at. What about the realities that we are in? I'm gonna divide it into two types of realities, with or without the pandemic. The first reality is artificial intelligence that is coming in. I'm giving you a few examples here. The first example is this. I'm not sure whether you've read this, but there's recently, this was published just very recently, and this is about a robot. So this robot is called the Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3. So they call it a GPT-3. And it's developed by scientists in San Francisco. And what they did was, it is a deep learning, the system or the computer has got deep learning, uses deep learning to produce human-like text. So they feed into the computer a prompt, just like we give our students a prompt, write something. So write 500 words or 600 words on something. So they gave it to the computer or the robot, 8, right? 8. And the robot came out with 8 different texts, and they are so human-like. And if you put it into the plagiarism software, they are not copying from one another. So this is coming up already. This is something that, you know, as teachers, as language teachers and writing teachers, we need to be aware of this that is coming up. And other examples are this. I came last year to Padang, and I talk a little bit about Lily, the smart speaker, which is a translator. So you say to the translator there, it will translate to you in the language that you want it to be translated to. The situational games that have come out now based on situation and using AI will be able to adapt. So if I say something and the AI would be able to respond correspondingly to how I respond in the situational games. And the speech recognition now, as I don't even need to type, I say something, and even though I have got slang and all that, the speech recognition now is able to pick up what I'm saying and translate that into text. And one of the latest ones, it is called Mentio, is a discussion platform. So basically, you go on a discussion forum, very like a discussion forum, but what this does is that it helps you to link ideas together. So at the back end, when the students write certain things, it helps the system or the computer is able to connect ideas together so that you'll be able to see some patterns of what the students have contributed. It will also be able to help you see whether the student agree with one another, how much agreement that one person has with the other person. So at the back end, there's all these things that's going on that's using the artificial intelligence. And of course, these are online programs that we are all aware of. It's all out there now. In the machine-based tools on the left-hand side, you submit your text and online, and the online program will be able to help highlight mistakes that we've made. In the center column, we have called it content-based programs. It is basically an online program or online programs that are offered by these providers. And then the person-based services are actually live human tutor that's on e-platform that people can go to and can talk to them online. So these are available now. So that's first reality. The second reality is approaches to teaching, learning, and assessing. And this is happening at, I just gave 4 scenarios to you. This is happening at my university. So during the pandemic, there are 4 options given to us. The first scenario is a face-to-face delivery. Basically, I could still go to class, but classes must be at one point less than 25 students, or a later stage less than 50 students with social distancing measures and so on and so forth. But I must also provide an online component, which could be an asynchronous for my students who cannot come to class. So assessment can be a combination of both. The second scenario is a blended approach. So everybody has the same treatment. That means I put on a blended module for all my students. So the blended module could be asynchronous online and synchronous online, or combination of both. The scenario number 3 that we have started to explore is this. I would have a group of students coming to class face to face. I need to stream it so that some of my students who are accessing it remotely can also be there simultaneously. And of course, the fourth one is fully online. I think we are somewhere in the continuum here, all of us, whether it's scenario 1, 2, 3, or 4. And that's the reality. When we have this reality, our teaching, our students' learning, our assessment will change as well. And so we're looking at, I'm going to focus a little bit on testing, because I think many have talked about teaching and learning, but not much has been discussed about remote e-exams. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So we used to have pen and paper face-to-face exams, like you see on the left-hand side. Everybody goes to a huge hall and then sit down, pen and paper, face-to-face exams. Because of the current situation, it now has to be remotely done and on an e-platform. So it's moving from face-to-face, pen and paper, to remote and e-exam. And when we move to the e-platform, there are a number of key issues that we have to grapple with. Number one, do we still then have time-sensitive exams? So many of my colleagues and most of us, actually all of us who have modules at our university, teaching language and communication and oral presentation modules, we have already, we don't have a time-sensitive exams. We give our students assignments and then they submit it, whether it's through an online platform, and then it's checked using a plagiarism software, turn it in, or they do oral presentation over Zoom. But there are still situations where a time-sensitive exam is still necessary. And we still do that in a large scale at my center, where we have 1,000 to 2,000 students who need to sit for a placement test. And those of us who are familiar with Professor Rod Ellis's work, he did a study in 2005 and he published that in 2005. And basically what he says is this, his findings. He says that time-sensitive exams are still important if we want to find out the explicit knowledge of our students. So his studies, which included native speakers and non-native speakers in 2005, they did a time grammatical judgment test. So what they found was that the grammatical sentences, grammatical ones, draw from our implicit knowledge. But to be able to identify ungrammatical sentences, we are drawing from our explicit knowledge. And therefore, if in our intended learning outcomes for our modules or the objectives of our modules, we want to know whether our students have learned explicit knowledge, then there should be an opportunity for us and for our students to find that out, and that's through a time pressured test. And because of that, because of the placement test that we need to do for students who are just coming into the university, we still have a large-scale exam that is time-sensitive. But at this point in time, we can't do that in a face-to-face situation. And so we have gone remote. So that's why we are still holding it, this large-scale exam with a time pressure on our students. Of course, there's also talk about formative versus summative exams. Formative exams basically allows us to discuss with the students their writing and all that. Summative is like the end course exam. Proctored versus non-proctored, basically you supervise or you don't supervise, you invigilate or not. And what the literature says is that you can't have both. You need to only have one exam condition because it affects the performance of the students. So basically a student who is in a different environment may give us different performance. And therefore we need to set constant the exam condition. So let me share very, very quickly with you what we did with this large scale pen and paper in-person exams. And then we move it to a large scale remote e-exams on a platform that is called ExamSoft. So ExamSoft allows the students to key in their essays. It locks down the computer, so the students can't go to internet, can't draw any file out of there except the exam questions. So that's level 1 done. Level 2 is, I still don't know, even if my students is sitting in their home, I don't know whether they have a friend sitting next to them, they have any materials that's hard copy with them. And therefore, a second level that we have to do is to use a second device, and it's through Zoom, and it's usually through a phone, and they need to fix it there so that all throughout the exam, we can see the movement of the student. We can see the student's face, what they're doing with their hands, and the exam device, as well as their surrounding workspace. So in 2 weeks' time, we will have this exam again. two of us will invigilate 49 students, because your Zoom screen can only accommodate 49, right? So we can only accommodate 47 students because there are 2 invigilators. So we have to go through this, and before that, of course, we have to, know their identity. So they need to show us their NRIC, their face here, and so that we establish identity, and then we go in and invigilate that exam. And it's about academic integrity that we hope and want to maintain with the students. Okay. So my second question to you is, in your reality, that's my reality that I'm sharing with you, and I focus quite a bit on assessment. What is your reality in ELT using the e-platform? So earlier we talked about challenges, but what is your reality? What is it that you have had to change? What is it that you've had to learn quickly? What is it that you've got to get your students to adapt to? And how have you managed all this? So again, I'm going to pause for 30 seconds for you to, quickly type in your responses. And then I'll move on to my last part of my presentation, which is about possibilities. So I'm going to pause here for about 30 seconds. Okay, so let me then move on to possibilities. I draw back to the challenges earlier, the possibilities of building engagement and rapport with students. You've talked about this, I've heard presentations about this, and people have tried this before. Increase dialogues, conversations in small group setting, use breakout rooms in Zoom, do a pre-course survey, do activities when you're talking or when you have online session with the students, use poll everywhere, Mentimeter, Kahoot, quizzes, etc. There's also the communication through Padlet, WhatsApp, Telegram, so on and so forth. And I suggest that if you want to measure how interactive or how engaged your students are, one of the frameworks that's been very established is called the ICAP, and stands for Interactive, Constructive, Active, and Passive. So you can, you might want to take a look at the studies done here. Basically, it helps us to measure behaviors that we can see and use as evidence to say the level or to determine the level of engagement. So that's engagement and rapport with the students. In terms of possibilities for our curricula, our materials, and our assessments, we probably need to re-examine what is in our curriculum, re-look if our materials and activities actually do distill the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes don't change. It's the platform that has changed. And we probably need to reconsider how we want to test and assess our students so that it aligns back to the intended learning outcomes. And doing all this without losing sight of higher order thinking, systematic inquiry, purposeful inquiry, as well as sustained collaboration and a sense of community. The next possibility is the well-being of our students and our staff members. This is a good time. This is a time that we probably want to ask, and we want to connect with our students and our colleagues as individuals, and to support one another. And I'm drawing you to 2 blog posts, and one is both about empathy. One is for
Excuse me,
leaders.
Dr. Casey. Excuse me.
My time's up.
Yes,
Okay.
unfortunately, we
I
have 5
got,
minutes left.
concluding thoughts now.
All right.
Yes,
Sorry.
thank you. And the right-hand side one is about teaching in the times of uncertainty. And so there's also possibility that of sharing and learning from one another through different forms, and this one is through a blog. I've put there a QR code. If you're interested, please do scan it and take a look at some of the blog posts there about teaching and learning. And we started this only in April this year. So some concluding thoughts. What's next for ELT in a digital era? For me, it is about mobile assisted language learning. It's about micro learning. It's personalized, and it's in the context of interdisciplinary education and in an embedded approach. So what is your response to quality of teaching and learning? in person, fully online, whether it's hybrid, we need to talk about what is the quality of teaching, learning, as well as our assessment. We also, I think, very importantly, need to ask ourselves this question. Now, with all this technology, have we left any of our students behind, whether it's academically, technologically, or emotionally? So I conclude and I thank you very much. And these are my references, and I leave this last page here if you would like to take a QR code of the blog post there. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Casey. Thank you very much. What a nice and insightful presentations for you, but unfortunately we ran out of time. But later on, we can elaborate more about your idea through the question and answer session. I believe that everyone is looking forward to ask you some questions, right? And now we move on to the second speaker, the fourth speaker of this session, the closing speakers of this online conference. It is from Professor Jufrizal Mhum. How are you, sir?
I'm fine.
All right.
Thank you very
much.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. He's one of our senior lecturer here in English department of Universitas Negeri Padang, and his expertise includes linguistic typology, anthropological linguistics, and also he focuses on the EFL grammar. Professor Jufrizal is currently active in teaching and producing research and also books in linguistic area. And he is often invited as a speaker and panelist in similar seminar online. In 30 minutes or so, I would like to invite you to listen and watch his great presentation, and don't forget to drop some questions for Dr. Casey and Professor Jufrizal later on. And so here we go. Please welcome Professor Jufrizal.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to share screen, but okay, once again, thank you very much, moderator, ladies and gentlemen, and all of audiences in the eighth International Conference on Language and English Language and Teaching. Today, 7th of November. I am coming to you today, not in the focus of language teaching, English foreign language teaching, and so on. And I am not talking about how to teach speaking, reading, writing, or listening as the skills of language, but I am coming to you with how to derive and do research in the digital era or COVID-19 pandemic. As the theme of our seminar and conference, this is one of possibility in conducting research in this condition. And my topic is about EFL learners' understanding on English German, a possible research focus in digital era. And based on this, I will not talk about many things related to teaching methodology or teaching technique or approaches. I just want to share my opinion on this occasion with how to do research, not involving many people or groups of people. This is a kind of research that is possible to do in the form of document analysis or uh, teaching English related to grammar, especially gerund. Now, because I am coming to you with the topic of gerund and how to do research in this grammatical point of view, let's see first a brief theoretical review of gerund. This is very traditional and linguistic views. In traditional grammar, there is a distinction drawn between participle and gerund, at least in English. A participle is a word which is derived from a verb and used as an adjective. A gerund is a word which is derived from verb and used as a noun. Gerunds and infinitives are verb forms that may be used in place of noun or pronoun. So, especially in English, sorry, where the ing form can be replaced in a sentence by a noun, then it is a gerund. Where the ing form is part of the verb or function like a verb, then it is a present participle. In condition related to this point, a gerund in linguistic view is any various non-finite verb form in various languages, most often, but not exclusively, one that functions as a noun. In linguistics, a gerund is a kind of verbal noun that exists in some languages. In English, verb gerund is formed using the ing ending. It is identical to the present participle in form, but behave differently in syntax. A gerund is a noun formed from a verb, which refers to an action, process, or step. In English, gerund ending in ing, for example, running and thinking. And based on this, we can see that a gerund is not a noun, but it sounds verb and it seems a verb. Number 7, a gerund in English is verbal noun ending in ing that has all the uses of the noun, but retains certain syntactic characteristics of the verb, such as the ability to take an object and adverbial modifier. Especially in English, what is the nature of gerund? Are gerund nouns or verbs? Are gerund unique or not? How essential is EFL learners' understanding on English gerund needed at the English Department of Universitas Negeri Padang? How necessary is the research on the EF learners' understanding on English gerund at digital and COVID-19 era? These are the questions that can be raised related to gerund phenomena, linguistic and semantic properties of gerund in English. So these questions are the thing that we need the answer for scientific one in order to have research in the form of library research and corpus-based learning. And it is also a kind of document analysis, which are possible to do in this digital and COVID-19 pandemic. Let's continue. Based on previous related studies and investigation on English gerund, there are some main points to be kept in mind. Number one, a gerund is a word type that looks like a verb with an ing suffix. A gerund also looks like a noun because it can be the subject or an object of a verb, such as in eating is enjoyable, reading Chomsky makes my head spin, and so on. So a gerund is a verb, like a verb. A gerund likes a verb. A gerund looks like a noun as well. So it is very interesting and sometimes challenging to discuss and to investigate the grammatical semantic features there. Number three, a gerund itself is unique as it has complicated properties of grammatical semantic features and practical uses. Then, are gerunds a noun? The answer is yes. Why gerunds are noun? Let's see. Gerund can serve as the subject of verb, which is something that otherwise only a noun can do. Let's see the following. Oatmeal is good for you. So, oatmeal, noun. Quickly, it is not grammatical. Quickly is good for you. So, adverb cannot be the subject of a sentence. Delicious is good for you. Adjective is not suitable. It is not grammatical sentence. Reading is good for you. Reading is a gerund. It can be a subject. So it has properties as a noun. Conjunction only join phrases of the same type, but gerund and noun phrase can be joined together. This is one more reason to say that gerund is a noun. If we combine gerund and noun phrase, it can be together by using conjunction. These are the examples. Eat and drink. Red and yellow, that's okay. But if we combine read and ring, mismatch. Eat and drink and yellow, it is also mismatch. But the example number E, the game was lost because of poor weather and John taking a red card. Now, let's see. Noun and gerund can be joined together by using conjunction. So, gerund is both verb and also noun as well. Another slightly more specific example is the sentence frame. I believe X bother you. This is the frame of sentence. We may put noun phrase in the exposition, but not a verb phrase. I believe that color of the new carpet. The color of the new carpet. That is noun phrase. I believe that you're not allergic. That is noun phrase. But we cannot say, I believe that Rachel took a vacation. But we are possible to use, I believe that Rachel taking a vacation. All right, the next one. Gerund can be used by using apostrophe S as possessive markers. Now, so possessive markers is only used for noun. Related to this, number A, B, and C example are grammatical, but we cannot say, I know that you are bothered, Susan. It is verb phrase. Now, in this case, we can say that possessive markers as the marker for the noun possessive, possessive pronoun, and so on, can be used in gerund. The next one, are gerunds verbs? The answer is yes. We can say gerund is a verb. Gerund are made from verb root. non-verb cannot form gerund. We can make a gerund from the verb to construct, but not from the noun construction. So the noisy from the builders constructing a house bothered everyone. But it is not grammatical if we say the noise from the builders constructing, because gerund itself constructed from construct, made from the construct, not construction. Gerund may have subject and object. These are also another thing which support that gerund itself is a verb. I fell, falling the stairs, John the fourth pizza, and so on. Now, these are the examples. All of the examples claim that gerund are verbs. It has semantic, grammatical properties as a verb. Gerund can also modify by adverb. It can be modified by adverb. And as we know, adverb is commonly used for verb. Now related to this, we can say that gerund has properties as a verb. Now these are the example. Gerund can take a negative noun. And then we have also not for attending meeting. Gerund can take negative noun, which normally does not negate noun, but it is used with verb in some cases. Now we can see in general that gerund are both verbs and also noun as previously stated. What makes gerund unique? Negative imperative of verb is usually formed with don't. So if we have negative imperative, we use don't. Don't eat the last cupcake. On the other hand, a prohibitive negative imperative form with gerund uses no instead. Now this is a very unique. In one side, gerund is a verb. It has something to do with verb properties. But for negative imperative, we use no. And no is used for noun in general and normally. So that gerund, once again, are noun and also verb. And in other side, gerunds are unique. Now, another thing that we have to do and we have to pay attention based on linguistic and grammatical properties of gerund is that gerund involve condition in which properties of noun are in it. In other side, properties of verb are also in the gerund. Now related to this, EFL learners, especially in Indonesia, may have serious difficulties and problems in using and understanding gerund. But in some point of views, gerund is very simple. But actually, understanding gerund and using gerund in a very grammatical point of view, especially in scientific writing or in formal language, they need serious attention and serious understanding. So what to do with the properties of gerund? The first one is that are gerunds verb or noun? Kind of both, and also may be unique in between verbs and noun. Gerunds have the internal characteristic of verb phrase, but are distributed in sentences like noun phrase. These frequently has made it difficult for both traditional grammar and modern linguistics to deal with gerund. Now, for traditional grammar, gerund do not fit into classic 8 part of speech theory. Gerunds have mixed behavior. Gerunds are not a person place thing, or they obviously action word, or an example of linking verb. So gerund is not person, place, or thing, nor are they obviously action word, or gerund are not linking verb. So gerund are sometimes problematic for modern syntactic theory. Gerund require positive phrase structure that does not always fit neatly with the way that English is otherwise described. If gerund is something different and unique in many things, so we need modern syntactic theory, but it is hard for linguists to assign a single structure of gerund. Now, as a gerund a problem in traditional and modern theories of grammar, let's see the following comparison. Gerund, verbal noun, and the verbal noun are the grammatical term related to nominal form from the verb, but they are in different kind of nominalization, which have different degrees of nominal and verbal properties. Now, the example number 1, John's refusing, it is a gerund. John's refusing of the offer was polite, that is verbal noun. John's refusal of the offer is unjustifiable. This is a kind of the verbal noun. Now, because gerund are unique and sometimes complicated and make problem in linguistic theory and of course also in language teaching of English. Now, those are all the fertile matters of having scientific research, at least the focus in the field of linguistics and also language learning. A lot of linguistic problems or language teaching problems dealing with gerund are available, challenging and interesting as well. The possible research problem and focuses are in the form of library research, document analysis, or in corpus-based research, which are appropriate in digital and pandemic COVID-19 era and situation. So I would like to offer, in addition to conducting research in language teaching process in the classroom in operational way, let's come to linguistic views, linguistic properties of English grammar, especially focuses on gerund. A lot of things that can be learned from gerund dealing with English as a foreign language. Now, one example of possible research problem I offer on this occasion is that EFL learners understanding on English gerund, a case at the English Department, Universitas Negeri Padang. Now, I found some data quoted from student thesis, proposal, and term papers. Let's see. The researcher will collect the data in the following step. Number 1, ask permission to school or leadership. Pay attention to the word ask. Distribute questionnaire to student. Ask student, collect student answer. The data analysis will use the following stages. Transcribe the recording data, rewrite and tabulating the data, analyze the data and counting numbers, interpret the data and draw conclusion. These are some sentences I quoted from student research proposal and some based on their term paper. Now, this is also the example. It seems to me, and we can see based on this data that some students are still in serious problem in using and understanding gerund. And also, of course, infinitive. Now, what should we do then? We may say that based on the data, the EF learners have problem in understanding and using gerund. They even do not have sufficient understanding on the parallelism of using gerund and infinitive. They cannot clearly differentiate between imperative form and the use of verb. They maybe only know that gerund are verb with ing function as a noun, but they forget they have not known yet that gerund have unique and specific grammatical semantic properties there. Now related to this, we can see that based on the gerund itself, because a lot of things are problematic and sometimes challenging and interested, it may be conducted in the form of library research dealing with gerund itself. We may do research in the form of library research, document analysis, or corpus-based research, which do not involve groups or lots of people. It may be as the investigation and exploration on student understanding on one of main grammatical items linguistically and academically, which can be used to evaluate and to have planning for better language program, especially in the English department. So on this occasion, I do not show the result of the research, but I just offer this is one focus, one theme and also one research area that can be conducted in this digital era and COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much. Please enjoy conducting research is focusing on English gerund. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and thank you very much, Professor Jofrizal. And no, before we are coming to the question and answer session, I would like to wrap a little bit about both speakers. And then Dr. Casey, I feel like I'm slapped, so hard when Dr. Casey asks whether we have prepared or not in this digital era. Like I know that this technology is running so fast and we are like just walking slowly. So if we do not improve our self to explore any information technology to support the learning process, and then yes, we are left behind. And then the second one is from Professor Jofrizal. That's a very nice research professor, and I hope that we can connect the Jiran research with the COVID-19 situation. All right, now let's move to the question and answer. I believe that Mr. Hanif have collected some questions from the participants. All right. I think my fellow participants can still drop your questions in the chat box. Okay, this is first question from for Dr. Casey. As we are reimagining the possibilities for ELT during and after COVID-19 pandemic, how we can support our students' academic, both in social and also psychological development, while preparing the transitional phases to in-person classroom in new normal. Yes, this is from Risang from Universitas Sanata Yogyakarta.
So, so that I don't misunderstand the question, it's basically transition that we've had before from face-to-face to online and now back to in-person. Maybe that's the question, or basically it's from face-to-face to online. But whatever it is, what we have done is what we have learned throughout this 9 months to a year is that communication is so important with our students to help them prepare. And so I'll just share screen a few examples of some of the infographics that we have prepared for our students. So let me just share screen on one of them. So when we went hybrid, we prepared infographics such as a very simple one. Our students just need one things that are, they don't want things that are 3 pages long. So it is a look at, how do I prepare for class and so on and so forth. This is one example of what we have done with our students. We've also prepared videos, very short, 2-3 minute video to help them get ready. So besides that, in terms of emotional well-being, the university has ramped up the psychological care, emotional care and well-being for the students. And again, I share this that was distributed to students and made available to students. So these kind of again infographics, and of course with information about where they could seek help and so on and so forth. I think it sometimes is the isolation, and like you say, it's a remoteness of I'm learning on my own and you're learning on your own. But basically, to be aware that we need to take more effort to create communities, online communities for our students if they don't take the initiative to do that. And I see them as opportunities to connect more with our students. And that's why in my presentation earlier, I mentioned that these are moments that we can seize and take this opportunity to have even more or deeper engagement with our students, even though it is not face-to-face. So there's really not no easy answer to that. But to me, a few things is just basically the communication. And number 2 is, frequently check on our students and to just establish that that engagement with our students, even beyond the classroom, and that helps a lot. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Casey. And we come to the second question. This is still for Dr. Casey. From Mrs. Yeni Rosimela from Universitas Negeri Padang. She asked that, how do you maintain or even increase your students' cognitive engagement? Like in our learning, in this online learning condition, we are remote, the students are remote.
Yeah, I think that's a very great question. And I think it has to do with our design, and that's why I think the earlier this morning's presenter talked about reimagining. But I would say first step is to re-examine what we're doing in our curriculum and see how, even with the change of a platform, how we can still achieve the same intended learning outcomes. I think our objectives for our modules and our courses are similar. The platform, the mode is different. And therefore, we need to re-examine how we distill this, learning outcomes, and to be able to translate that in our materials, in our assessment, in our delivery of all this, whether it's online, synchronous or asynchronous, in an online platform. So I think we will need to start from how we do our materials, how we do our curriculum, as well as our tests. And all this are really interrelated to this. But the students, I think our students are very, very adaptable. They're much more adaptable than I am. And they move very fast. They catch on very fast, and if there is coherence, clarity in what we do, and they're challenged, and I think they can go, they can be very creative, and they can be also very innovative in what they do. They surprise us. I'm sure you experience this as well. It's the kind of stimulus that we give them, the kind of preparation that we give them, our students.
All right. That's it. This is the third question. And now still for Dr. Casey, how do you deal with the students who is cheating? Okay, this is the problematic, right? We don't know what they are doing at home, and we don't know, we cannot control them at all. And to what extent do we can trust our students in
Yeah.
terms of testing down online?
Yeah, it's well, this is a continuation of, I think I'll explain this a little bit. It's a great question.
All right.
So with any online exam, like I shared earlier, when you can't monitor the students, you know, face to face, like we always do, you know, give paper and pen, and then we walk along the aisle and all that. And that's why we proctor it. That means we use a second device to see what the students are doing. The research has shown this, that I think earlier I have a proctored and unproctored or non-proctored as attention or issue. Research has shown that if you don't proctor an exam, that tendency, an appeal for people to cheat is much greater. I mean, I think that's really, maybe it's a common sense thing, but research has really affirmed that. And therefore, there are a few things that we can do as teachers. Number one is don't set questions that people can cheat now, you know,
Yep.
but that's saying that is simpler than doing it, right? You can still set question and then you use Turnitin as a plagiarism software, but still some people get away because they may ask some other person to write for them, right? So set exams that are not so easily cheatable. Number two is high stakes versus medium stake versus low stake exams. Do you distribute the stakes, or do you put all the 100% or 60% in that one basket there? That's another approach. And the third thing is an adaptive test format, which as classroom teachers, we may not have the time to do it. And if we go with, you know, the ELT kind of exams out there, they're expensive. But we can build an exam bank if we want to, slowly, so that it's adaptive and people can't really cheat that well. But I'm just basically going back to this. It's not easy when you want, you know, to get this academic integrity. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. Even with penalties and all that looming here also, you know, you cheat, you get caught, you get out of the university and all that. There are still people who...
Yes, it doesn't work anymore, I think.
Yes, especially if it is unproctored exam. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? All right. So that's another challenging in assessment. Okay. And then we come to the Professor Jeffrizal. This question is from Risang, Bapak Risang again, from Sanata Dharma, Yogyakarta. What do you think about the incorporation of classroom-based corpora and DGL, data-driven learning, in our remote language classroom during the pandemic situation? Right,
Okay,
sir?
thank you very much for moderator, and thank you very much Pak Risang Baskara from
Sanata Dharma.
Sanata
Dharma.
This is a very good question, and it is a question which make my inspiration develop better. I do not know whether my topic is interesting for language teaching in the classroom, especially EFL teachers and lecturers, because my basic foundation of paper presented to you is linguistic-based paper. But based on Irisang Baskara question, I believe that in this situation, a digital era and also COVID-19 pandemic, this is very essential and also helpful and beneficial if we use in cooperation our classroom-based corpora and data-driven learning in our remote language classroom during the pandemic. Now, this is very important because based on this approach and also the paper delivered to you just now, DDL, data-driven learning in our class are possibly used. This is very challenging and interesting as well, as far as the teacher and the lecturer find and select appropriate learning material for particular level and grade. Now, related to this, we are possible to do incorporation classroom based corpora and DDL in our class, especially in English as a foreign language. That's right. Teaching language cannot be separated in a very great gap with linguistic view. So that I really support that the incorporation of classroom-based corpora and DDO in remote language classroom during pandemic is useful as well as helpful in my mind. That is my response and answer for question number one.
Thank you, Professor. And this comes next question, still for you. Will it be possible to be one of the alternative approaches to conduct classroom-based linguistic research during this pandemic? And if yes, if the answer is yes, what are the recommendations for the novice researchers?
All right.
That's from Bapak
Again from
Rizan.
Isang Baskara. Thank you very much again. This is what I mean to present this paper in front of you all together in order to do and conduct research based on linguistic views in this pandemic. And it is also very highly possible to do research in the form of classroom-based linguistic research because this type of research can be conducted in the form of library research, in the form of corpus-based research, and also classroom-based linguistic research. So, as the teacher and the researcher in the language classroom, in addition to practical and operational research in the classroom background, we may conduct research in the form of classroom-based linguistic research during this pandemic. So I agree that this is one of linguistic focus which can be done by researcher in language classroom. Nah, recommendation for the novice researchers. Nah, in addition to Jaren, as we can see from the comparison between Bahasa Indonesia or our local languages and English, now we may see the recommendation for research such as problem and difficulties faced by learners, EFL learners in understanding and using Jaren. This is one recommendation. And also the data can be seen and based from writing works of the student. In addition, we may also see that another thing related to Jaren, whether it is in semantic form and also in the understanding of sense of the language. Now, related to this, a lot of research problem and thesis or scriptsy written by learners are available and possible to do in the form of classroom-based linguistic research in this pandemic, because this is not only useful for the teacher in order to face the COVID-19 pandemic, but it is also a kind of our work in order to promote and increase student understanding on linguistic views, linguistic properties of the language being learned. Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome, Professor. And this is the our last question, unfortunately, from Mr. Ayendi from Universitas Andalas to Professor Jeffrizal, what are the linguistic aspects that we can do for research in English teaching field, I guess?
All right, Andy, thank you very much for the question. As I mentioned just now, I am not good in teaching methodology. So I am not good in technique of teaching. But I believe that linguistic aspects are possible to be the focus and form of our research in English language teaching. Another example, as I have said just now, IND, EFL learners understanding on English German. This is one focus, one form of linguistic aspect in research, especially in teaching English. In addition to this, we can see also that semantic, grammatical understanding and appropriate uses of gerund in writing. So we can see error analysis and also the appropriateness of using gerund or infinitive in writing term, especially in scientific writing. Another thing that we can do related to research, linguistic aspect in the research of English teaching is that the understanding of using infinitive, gerund, and also deverbal verb, deverbal noun, deverbal, and also gerund, especially nominalization, including pronoun and noun, are also possible to do because our language and our local language are much more different from the grammar of English itself. So that we need to do research related to this linguistic aspect based on semantic, grammatical syntax and morphology, and also related to morphology and lexicon. Yeah, you are free to choose, but I just focus that why don't we do research in language teaching based on linguistic aspect. I agree with you in order to do research in the form of this linguistic aspect. Thank you, moderator.
All right. So those are some branches of linguistic aspect that you can use to do your own research, but in the teaching field area. So I guess we are approaching to closing ceremony, but before I end up this plenary session, I would like to invite again both panelists to 1 or 2 minutes to say a closing statement from Dr. Casey.
So, okay, I'll just do a plug-in again. I thought that I'd like to invite you, anyone who's interested in contributing to this blog platform that we call Teaching Connections. It's not just about ELT, but in general teaching and learning. So anyone who might have an interest to share your experience, please do send in. I mean, the QR code is there. It's only usually a blog post is usually 500 to 600 words. We have got plenty of very interesting blog posts there shared by our colleagues as well as other colleagues elsewhere. So that's my first invitation to colleagues here. The second one is I'm really excited about doing collaborations and all that on mobile learning as well as micro learning. And we've started a small little project with the university, and which we hope that it will continue. But if there are people who are interested in that, please do connect. Please do send me an email. I do think that this is something in terms of language teaching. This is something that is coming up pretty soon in the next decade or so. So thank you very much. for the invitation to be here. I followed through the parallel sessions and all that. I'm pleased and I'm very glad to spend my Saturday with you at this conference. Thank you.
All right, you are welcome, Dr. Casey. Thank you. Thank you again for coming here virtually. And next, Professor Jufrizal.
Thank you very much. On this occasion, I just want to state two main ideas as the closing statement in this conference. The first one, it is possible and also challenging as well as interesting to do research based on linguistic aspect related to teaching learning process. So we need to do research in other side, not based on the practical uses of language teaching, but also we do research based on linguistic aspect, like the example I mentioned that is about gerund. Second one, this is a very difficult and complicated and sometimes problematic situation. Conducting research in the form of linguistic aspect may be conducted in document analysis, library research, or corpus-based linguistics. We do not need to involve groups, people, or many people. So it is safe to do research in this focus, in this area, but of course we need to be brave to say and state that linguistic is not a problem at all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Professor Jufrizal and Dr. Casey, for coming here as speakers today. And finally, I would like to say thank you very much for the participants who are still staying here, tuning in from the beginning, from early in the morning until now. And it's time for me to sign out. And thank you very much for your attention. And I'm giving back this main screen to Miss Aisa.
Okay, thank you so much for the thought-provoking presentations to both keynote speakers, Associate Professor Lee Koi Cheng and Professor Dr. Jufrizal M. Hum. Thank you also to Ms. Keke and Mr. Hanif. Okay, distinguished guests, keynote speakers, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the presentations from the keynote speakers today. We would like to thank one more time the four keynote speakers and all the parallel sessions presenters for the informative and interesting talk, and also to all the participants for your active participation. Moving on, let's listen to an explanation regarding the ICOELT proceeding publication by Muhammad Afandi Arianto, MPD.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibu Yati Aisyarani. Okay, just the point, we are from the reviewers and proceeding committee. Announce you all the presenters that for everybody who wants to publish the paper in index proceeding, we have collaborated with Atlantis Press since 2017. The Atlantis Press is indexed by Clarified Analytics Web of Science databases, such as the Science Citations Index Expanded, the Emerging Sources Citation Index, and the Conference Proceedings Citation Index. And also Directory Open Access Journals, Google Scholars, and CNKI. So we are from ICOEL committee, open for those who want to publish the articles into the index proceeding Atlantis Press. So you must follow the template or format, and the template of the article can be downloaded from www.icol.fds.unp.ac.id in a download menu. So the text adheres to the stylistic and references requirements outlined in IEEE style, not APA style. Again, in IEEE style, not APA style. And remember, that the deadline for the full paper submissions is in November 15, 2020. The article's payment charge is about 1,800,000 rupiahs or 150 US dollars. The reviewers will review and give feedbacks to the articles, and the authors have to revise the article as soon as possible. And we will publish the articles in around December or January 2021. So for the further information, you can contact our secretariat about how to submit your full paper. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Muhammad Afandi Arianto, MPD. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our conference. Last but not least, it is our honor to invite Head of English Language and Literature Department of Universitas Negeri Padang to officially close our conference. Please welcome Desvalini Anwar, SSM Hum, PhD.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Yati. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Be upon all of us. A very good afternoon, everyone, and especially a very good evening to Dr. Melissa Barnes in Australia. As I understand, my speech will close this conference. So on behalf of the organizing committee of ICOELT 8 2020 and the English Language and Literature Department of Universitas Negeri Padang, I would like to thank everyone for supporting this annual international conference on English language teaching. To thank the Rector of Universitas Negeri Padang, who is represented today by the Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, Dr. Refnaldi M. Lid, the Dean and the Vice Dean of Academic Affairs of the Faculty of Languages and Arts, and the Chairperson of the conference, Professor Dr. M. Zaim M. Hum, for all your support, full support to make this conference happen. Our special gratitude is, of course, addressed to all our four invited speakers, Dr. Melissa Barnes from Monash University, Dr. Lajiman bin January from University Pendidikan Sultan Idris, Malaysia, Dr. Lee Kucheng, or Miss Cassie, as I know, from National University of Singapore, and Professor Chifrizal from Universitas Negeri Padang, Indonesia. The great presentations delivered by all the four speakers have highlighted our conference today. I would like as well to thank the presenters of the panel sessions. Without your active participation, this conference would not have happened as we had expected. And last but not least, thank you very much to all members of the organizing committee who had worked very, very hard to make this conference possible. Your young spirit and strong commitment for our conference has been greatly felt and much appreciated. Thank you. Bapak, Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed a day full of enriching experiences. From morning to afternoon, we have come together to exchange views, knowledge, and experiences. I believe that many good experiences have been shared and good lessons have been learned. I'm heartened that we are still able to meet and hold this conference despite the COVID-19 pandemic that is still with us and is still around us, which to me reflects our optimism and strong commitment to knowledge and also to friendship. From all the invited speakers' presentations and also from the presenters of the parallel sessions, I can conclude that in order to survive these days in our teaching, we need to reimagine teaching, transforming that what we have thought in the first place as obstacles, hindrance, and challenges into possibilities in order to develop together and appropriate this COVID-19 pandemic condition, the online learning education, the digital era for our own purposes, especially for the benefits of the young people in our hands. Like Ms. Cassie said, one of the ways we can do to survive this day is to face realities like the artificial intelligence that is already available with us. So let's make use of it. I also learned from Dr. Lajiman, who analyzed Macron's speech through post-colonial perspective, that the world is no longer governed by one perspective, by one single perspective, but various outlooks. So we need to appreciate and develop respects towards various perspectives in order to live in the world as we know today. Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the end of our ICOELT conference, but please let me remind you all that this will not be our last chance to meet. 1 year from now, with the support from all the staffs of the English Language and Literature Department and the university, I will assure you that inshallah, the next 9th ICOELT conference will also happen again in 2021. Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, roses are red, violets are blue. Conference will totally be flat without the presence of all of you. Thank you very much. I formally close this conference by saying Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you again.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this completes the 8th International Conference on English Language and Teaching 2020. We look forward to seeing you again at the 9th ICOELT 2021. Thank you so much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fandi. Thank you, Miss Charlie.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Pak Zaim.
Thank you, Buyen, for the participation and question.
Everybody.
You know, I'm in the room with 3 laptops open.
Yeah.
So thank
I'm
you.
with two, one laptop and one computer open.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you, Pak WR.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Killing of 3 laptops.
I'm lucky to listen to many presenters.
So let's do it online, much more efficient. Less hustle and bustle. Let's do it again next year through online. But Zaim, the timeline is better to do it online.
Speakers,
Buka masnya, maskernya dibuka.
Yay, Meni, you can
Mana orangnya?
tonight. Kita di sini aja deh, kita nggak usah pulang. Bu Yeni dari Pasca, Bu Yen?
Ya.
Nggak ada yang mau bergerak dari labor, Bu. Di sini
Selamat semuanya, selamat Bu Eva, selamat panitia semuanya. Selamat.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, committee member. Thank you, sekretariat. Thank you, persidangan.
Selamat para
Thank you,
moderator.
konsumsi.
Selamat Pak Zaim. Semuanya.
Selamat untuk semuanya, selamat.